You've been running a rescue mission disguised as a relationship. You've studied attachment theory trying to understand their patterns. You've adjusted your behavior hoping to make them feel safe. You've given space when they withdrew thinking distance would help them return. You've been patient, believing your consistency would eventually heal their wounds. You've explained their behavior to friends and family, protecting their image. You've absorbed their chaos, helping them regulate emotions they couldn't manage. You've become an expert on avoidant attachment while forgetting to be an expert on your own needs and boundaries. This wasn't love. This was a project. You assigned yourself the role of healer, fixer, therapist, savior. You believed if you just understood them deeply enough, accommodated skillfully enough, loved patiently enough, they would eventually heal and become the partner you needed. You confused compassion for their wounds with acceptance of their patterns. You mistook understanding their psychology for excusing their impact on you. You thought being their emotional support system was partnership when actually it was you doing all the relationship labor, while they remained defended and comfortable. The fixing mission consumed you. Your mental energy went toward analyzing their behavior instead of building your own life. Your emotional bandwidth went toward managing their feelings instead of processing your own. Your time went toward waiting for them to change instead of creating the life you wanted. Your self-worth became tied to whether you could successfully heal them instead of being grounded in your inherent value. You lost yourself in the mission. And the mission was always doomed because you cannot fix another adult's attachment wounds. That work belongs only to them, only through therapy, only through their choice to engage vulnerable healing process you cannot do for them. What happens when you stop trying to fix them? Liberation. Complete, devastating, beautiful liberation. You reclaim energy that was hemorrhaging toward their healing. You redirect focus that was consumed by their patterns. You remember who you were before you became someone's unpaid therapist. You discover what life feels like when you're not managing another adult's emotional regulation. You experience the shocking peace of not walking on eggshells. You realize how much space opens up when you're not analyzing every interaction for signs of progress or regression. You start building instead of endlessly repairing. You start living instead of endlessly hoping. Your ego and pride were invested in succeeding at the impossible task, and releasing that is freedom. You didn't just want the relationship to work. You needed to prove you could fix them. Your ego was involved. Your pride was on the line. You're intelligent, capable, understanding. Surely you could be the one who gets through to them. Surely your patience would be sufficient. Surely your love would be healing enough. Previous partners failed because they didn't understand attachment theory. They gave up too quickly. They weren't compassionate enough. But you would be different. You would succeed where others failed. This ego investment kept you trapped longer than love alone would have. Leaving meant admitting defeat. It meant acknowledging that despite all your understanding, all your accommodation, all your emotional labor, you couldn't fix them. It meant facing that you failed at the mission you assigned yourself. And your ego resisted this admission fiercely. So you stayed longer, tried harder, adjusted more, convinced yourself that just a bit more patience, just a bit more understanding, just a bit more sacrifice would finally produce the breakthrough you'd been working toward for months or years. Your pride was wrapped up in being the exceptional partner, the one who understands, the one who doesn't give up on people, the one who sees potential and believes in growth. Walking away meant contradicting your identity as patient, compassionate, committed person. It meant others might see you as someone who abandoned a struggling person. It meant you might see yourself as someone who quit. And pride resisted this characterization intensely. But here's the truth that liberation reveals. Releasing someone you cannot fix is not failure. It's wisdom. Admitting you cannot heal another person's attachment wounds is not defeat. It's accepting reality. Walking away from unfixable situation is not giving up. It's self-protection and appropriate boundary setting that recognizes you are not responsible for another adult's therapeutic work. Your ego and pride were invested in an impossible task. You cannot fix someone else's defended attachment patterns through love, understanding, patience, or perfect behavior. That's not how attachment wounds heal. They heal through the wounded person choosing trauma-informed therapy, engaging vulnerable internal work over years, building new relational capacities with professional support. Nothing you do as romantic partner creates this. Your exceptional qualities, your psychological knowledge, your endless accommodation, none of it substitutes for their therapeutic work. Releasing ego investment in fixing them is profound freedom. You no longer need to prove you're exceptional enough to heal someone. You no longer carry the burden of their potential as your responsibility. You no longer measure your worth by whether you could successfully change someone who wasn't choosing to change themselves. You accept you're human with limits, not superhuman healer, whose love should transcend therapeutic necessity. Releasing pride investment in being the partner who never gives up is equally freeing. You can be compassionate and maintain boundaries. You can understand their wounds and refuse to sacrifice yourself indefinitely. You can believe in people's potential and accept that potential is their responsibility to actualize. You can walk away from what's harming you and still be a good person. These aren't contradictions. They're mature integration of compassion with self-protection. The liberation includes forgiving yourself for the ego and pride that kept you trapped. You wanted to be special enough to heal them. That's understandable. You wanted your love to be powerful enough to transform them. That's human. You wanted to succeed at showing someone they're worthy of love. That's beautiful intention. But intentions don't change reality. You couldn't fix them because they didn't choose to fix themselves through proper therapeutic channels. That's not your failure. That's just reality of how attachment healing actually works. You stop performing emotional labor that was never reciprocated, and the energy return is staggering. The fixing mission required constant emotional labor. You monitored their moods to gauge safety of expressing your needs. You carefully worded everything to avoid triggering their defenses. You managed your own emotions to avoid burdening them with feelings they couldn't handle. You initiated difficult conversations they avoided. You did relationship maintenance they neglected. You processed both your feelings and helped them process theirs. You explained their behavior to yourself, making sense of patterns they wouldn't acknowledge. You carried hope for both of you when they expressed none. This emotional labor was extensive, exhausting, and completely unreciprocated. They didn't monitor your moods to gauge your needs. They didn't carefully consider your triggers. They didn't manage themselves to avoid burdening you. They freely burdened you while you absorbed it all. They didn't initiate relationship conversations. They didn't maintain the relationship. You did all maintenance. They didn't process your feelings. You processed alone while also helping them. They didn't carry hope. You carried enough for both while they remained ambivalent or avoidant. The asymmetry was staggering. You gave 90% while they gave 10%. You did maximum relationship work while they did minimum. You invested everything while they remained defended and comfortable. And you tolerated this asymmetry because you believed it was temporary, believed that your labor would eventually teach them how to reciprocate, that your modeling would show them what partnership looks like, that your investment would inspire their investment. It didn't. It never does. Your emotional labor didn't inspire reciprocation. It enabled their continued minimal effort. It made their defended, comfortable position sustainable. It removed consequences that might have motivated change. Every time you absorbed their inadequacy, you taught them inadequacy was acceptable. Every time you did relationship work for both people, you allowed them to continue not doing their share. When you stop performing this labor, the energy return is absolutely staggering. Suddenly you have mental space you haven't had in years. You're not constantly analyzing, explaining, understanding, accommodating, managing. Your mind is quiet, available for other things, for your interests, your goals, your thoughts, your life. The bandwidth that went toward their emotional regulation returns to you. You can feel your own feelings without immediately shifting to manage theirs. You can have a bad day without performing emotional strength, so they don't withdraw from your humanity. The physical energy returns too. Emotional labor is exhausting. It drains you even when you don't realize it's happening. The constant vigilance about their state, the perpetual management of relationship dynamics, the endless processing of patterns. When you stop, your body relaxes in ways you forgot were possible. Sleep improves because you're not replaying interactions, analyzing what you could have done differently. Stress decreases because you're not managing two people's emotional lives. You have energy for exercise, for hobbies, for friends, for activities that got neglected while all your resources went toward the fixing mission. The emotional space is revelatory. You remember what it feels like to be light, to laugh without the weighted awareness of their emotional state dampening your joy, to make plans without calculating their probable withdrawal or resistance, to feel excited about your life instead of anxious about relationship status, to experience your emotions as just yours to feel, not yours to manage while also managing theirs. You start using this returned energy for yourself, building career you put on hold, reconnecting with friends you neglected, pursuing interests you abandoned, creating life that's full and satisfying independent of romantic relationship. And as you build, you realize how much you gave up for someone who never appreciated the sacrifice, never reciprocated the investment, never did their own work to become partner worthy of your extraordinary emotional labor. The liberation teaches you what reciprocity actually looks like. It's not you doing 90% and them doing 10%. It's both people doing 50%. It's both people initiating, both people processing their own emotions and supporting each other, both people maintaining relationship, both people invested, both people doing the work. You deserved this all along. You just couldn't see it while you were buried under unreciprocated emotional labor you mistook for love. You discover that their patterns continue with new people, proving you were never the problem. One of the most liberating discoveries after stopping the fixing mission is watching them repeat exact same patterns with new people. You might see through social media, through mutual friends, through their dating profile, that appears months after claiming they needed to work on themselves. And what you observe is identical dysfunction with new victim. They're withdrawn with new person, just like they were with you. They're emotionally unavailable in new relationship, just like they were in yours. They're inconsistent, hot and cold, deactivating. All the patterns you experienced are manifesting again. New person is getting the same treatment, the same breadcrumbs, the same withdrawal after intimacy, the same resistance to commitment, the same defended minimization. Everything you struggled with, new person is now struggling with. This observation is proof that patterns belong to them, not to relationship dynamics between you. Throughout relationship, they suggested problems were partially your fault. You were too needy, too emotional, too demanding, too sensitive. Their patterns were responses to your inadequacies. If you just changed, they could be different. You internalized this. You wondered if you were the problem. You adjusted yourself trying to be less of whatever they claimed was triggering their patterns. But watching them repeat patterns with new person who is completely different from you reveals the truth. Their patterns are their defended attachment structure, not responses to partner inadequacy. Doesn't matter if new person is more independent than you, they'll still withdraw. Doesn't matter if new person is more emotionally reserved, they'll still be unavailable. Doesn't matter if new person has lower expectations, they'll still resist commitment, because patterns stem from their internal defensive structure, not from external partner characteristics. This realization demolishes any remaining belief that you could have fixed them by being different. You couldn't. No version of you would have produced different outcome. Not more independent you, not less emotional you, not lower expectation you, not more patient you, because their patterns aren't about you. They never were. They're about their unhealed attachment wounds that only therapy can address. Your ego and pride might have believed you failed because you weren't skilled enough, understanding enough, perfect enough. Watching them repeat patterns with new people proves this false. You didn't fail. The mission was impossible. They need therapeutic intervention, not better partner. And you could have been the most perfectly calibrated partner in existence. It wouldn't have mattered. Their patterns would have continued because patterns require their therapeutic work, not your excellence. This discovery also reveals something about new person. They're now on the fixing mission you just escaped. They're probably convinced they can succeed where you failed. They're probably adjusting themselves trying to prevent patterns. They're probably studying avoidant attachment. They're probably sacrificing themselves, hoping to heal someone who isn't choosing therapy. They're doing exactly what you did, and it won't work for them either. You feel compassion for new person, while also feeling profound relief that you're no longer in that position. You escaped. You stopped the mission. You're free. They're just beginning the cycle you completed. And unless avoidant chooses therapy, which patterns continuing suggest they haven't, new person will eventually reach the same breaking point you reached. They'll exhaust themselves trying to fix unfixable situation. They'll lose themselves in the mission, until hopefully they too choose liberation over continued sacrifice for someone refusing to do their own work. You start attracting different people, or enjoying being alone, because your energy completely shifts. When you are on the fixing mission, you broadcasted specific energy. You are available for projects. You are open to potential. You saw wounded people and felt drawn to help. You believed in transformation. You were willing to sacrifice for someone's growth. This energy attracted other avoidants, other wounded people, other projects disguised as relationships, because people seeking fixes can sense who will take on that role. Your energy also communicated unavailability for healthy partnership. Healthy, securely attached people sensed you were enmeshed in fixing mission. They recognized you weren't actually available. Your emotional bandwidth was consumed elsewhere. Your focus was on changing someone. Your standards were compromised by hope for potential rather than grounded in present reality. Healthy people didn't pursue because they could feel you weren't in position to build mutual reciprocal partnership. When you stop fixing mission, your entire energy shifts. You're no longer available for projects. You're no longer interested in potential. You're interested in present demonstrated capacity. You're no longer willing to sacrifice yourself for someone else's possible growth. You're no longer drawn to wounded people needing rescue. You're now oriented toward health, reciprocity, mutual investment, actual partnership. This shifted energy attracts completely different people. Securely attached people notice you. People who've done their therapeutic work recognize you as someone who's also done work. People with capacity for healthy relationships sense your availability for genuine partnership. The people showing up now are fundamentally different from those you attracted while broadcasting fixer energy. And critically, you're different in how you evaluate them. You're not looking at potential. You're looking at present reality. You're not making excuses for red flags. You're seeing red flags as information and acting on that information by protecting yourself. You're not waiting for people to change. You're only interested in people who are already who you need them to be. You're not compromising standards, hoping someone will rise to meet them eventually. You're maintaining standards and only engaging with people who already meet them. Some people you're attracting now would have approached you before, but you weren't receptive. You were too focused on the avoidant, too invested in the mission, too convinced that this person with enough work would eventually transform. You missed available healthy people because you were busy trying to manufacture availability in someone who was fundamentally unavailable. Now you're receptive. You notice when someone is consistent. You appreciate when someone is emotionally available. You value when someone reciprocates your investment. You recognize when someone is choosing you clearly. These weren't things you could see before. You were so accustomed to dysfunction that healthy started looking boring. Consistency felt like lack of chemistry. Availability felt like neediness. Reciprocity felt like too much too soon. But liberation recalibrates your entire system. Healthy now feels comfortable. Consistency feels safe. Availability feels like partnership. Reciprocity feels like the baseline you deserve. Your nervous system is no longer activated by avoidant patterns. You're not chasing. You're not anxious about someone's feelings. You're not analyzing. You're just experiencing whether connection feels good and whether person demonstrates capacity for partnership you need. Some people discover during liberation that they actually enjoy being alone. After years of exhausting fixing mission, solitude feels peaceful. Having your own space, your own time, your own emotional bandwidth for yourself, it's revelatory. You're not lonely. You're not desperate for relationship. You're genuinely content building your life, pursuing your interests, enjoying friendships, being with yourself. This contentment is attractive. People notice someone who's genuinely happy alone. It communicates self-sufficiency, wholeness, that you want partnership, not need it. This is fundamentally different energy from the fixing mission, where part of you needed to succeed at healing someone to feel valuable. You realized the relationship was keeping you small. and you start expanding into who you actually are. During fixing mission, you minimized yourself constantly. You made yourself smaller so they wouldn't feel threatened. You dimmed your emotions so they wouldn't withdraw from your intensity. You reduced your needs so they wouldn't feel overwhelmed. You suppressed your ambitions so they wouldn't feel inadequate. You adjusted your entire personality to accommodate their defended limitations. You didn't realize you were doing this. It happened gradually. Little adjustments that seemed reasonable. Don't express too much excitement. They find enthusiasm overwhelming. Don't share deep emotions. They can't handle intensity. Don't ask for much. They experience needs as pressure. Don't outshine them professionally. They feel competitive. Don't be too independent. They feel unnecessary. Don't be too dependent. They feel trapped. These adjustments compounded until you were unrecognizable. Your natural enthusiasm was flattened. Your emotional depth was concealed. Your needs were silenced. Your ambitions were shelved. Your authentic self was hidden behind carefully managed presentation designed to keep them comfortable. You were performing a role, the low-maintenance, understanding, patient partner who didn't trigger their defenses. This performance was exhausting and soul-crushing. You lost touch with who you actually were. Your wants became unclear because you'd suppressed them so long. Your feelings became confusing because you'd managed them constantly. Your identity became uncertain because you'd built it around accommodating someone else's limitations rather than around your authentic nature. Liberation means releasing the performance. You stop managing yourself for someone else's comfort. You stop minimizing to avoid triggering defenses. You stop adjusting to accommodate limitations. You just be yourself. Full volume, full intensity, full needs, full ambitions, full authenticity, and you start expanding. You pursue the career advancement you put on hold because they felt threatened by your success. You engage emotionally at your natural depth because you're no longer around someone who found feelings overwhelming. You express needs clearly because you're no longer with someone who experienced needs as burden. You feel your enthusiasm fully because you're not dimming it for someone who found your joy too much. This expansion is incredible. You remember who you are. You discover parts of yourself that got buried. You develop aspects that couldn't grow in the constrained environment. You become more vibrant, more authentic, more alive, more yourself. Friends notice. You seem different, lighter, more like yourself. They're seeing the real you that was hidden during relationship. They're seeing you unfiltered by constant accommodation of someone else's defended psychology. They're seeing you expanded instead of contracted. You notice too. Life feels bigger. You're taking up space you're entitled to instead of shrinking to avoid conflict. You're expressing yourself authentically instead of performing careful management. You're pursuing what you want instead of limiting yourself to what wouldn't threaten someone else. You're living instead of constantly adjusting yourself smaller to fit into someone else's defended comfort zone. The expansion reveals how much the relationship was costing you. It wasn't just time and energy on fixing mission. It was your authentic self, your full expression, your natural enthusiasm and emotional depth and ambition and needs. You sacrificed all of it trying to be a person who wouldn't trigger their defenses. And it still didn't work because their defenses aren't about you. They're about their unhealed wounds that your minimization couldn't heal and your expansion wouldn't have threatened if they'd done therapeutic work addressing defended structure. You develop actual standards instead of hoping someone will rise to meet potential standards. During fixing mission, you didn't have standards, you had hopes. You hoped they would become consistent. You hoped they would develop emotional availability. You hoped they would eventually reciprocate your investment. You hoped they would do therapeutic work. These hopes masqueraded as standards, but they weren't. Standards are maintained in present. Hopes are projected onto future that may never arrive. You tolerated present inadequacy based on future possibility. They're inconsistent now, but you hoped they'd become reliable later. They're emotionally unavailable now, but you hoped they'd open up eventually. They don't reciprocate now, but you hoped they'd become invested someday. This hope-based tolerance meant you had no real boundaries protecting you from present harm. You sacrificed present well-being for future fantasy. Liberation develops real standards, not hopes, not potential, not future possibility, present reality requirements. Someone is either consistent now or they're not suitable partner now. Someone is either emotionally available now or they're not appropriate match. Now, someone either reciprocates investment now or they're not worthy of continued investment now. These standards are non-negotiable. You're not waiting for someone to develop capacity. You're not hoping someone will eventually do therapeutic work. You're not tolerating inadequacy based on understanding their wounds. You're simply requiring that anyone in relationship with you already possesses capacities necessary for healthy partnership, already consistent, already emotionally available, already reciprocal, already done their therapeutic work or actively engaged in it with demonstrated progress. This standards-based approach feels harsh initially. Your compassionate self protests. But people can grow. Yes, they can. On their own time. Through their own therapeutic work. Not through your sacrifice while you wait and hope. But everyone has wounds. True. And people with wounds who want partnership do therapeutic work, addressing those wounds before or during early relationship. They don't expect partner to absorb consequences of unaddressed wounds indefinitely. But standards-based approach is actually deeply compassionate to yourself. It's recognizing you deserve partnership with someone ready for partnership. It's acknowledging you're not rehabilitation center for wounded adults who refuse therapy. It's accepting you cannot love someone into healing and shouldn't sacrifice yourself trying. Standards also create clarity. No more confusion about whether to stay. Does person meet standards? No? Then you leave. Simple. No more endless analysis about whether you should give one more chance. Standards already established what's acceptable. Person either meets them or doesn't. No more agonizing about timing. You don't wait for right time to enforce standards. Standards are always enforced immediately when violated. People who meet standards feel completely different. There's no anxiety, no analyzing, no hoping, no fixing. Just clear mutual investment, clear reciprocity, clear consistency, clear emotional availability, clear choosing. It feels easy because healthy partnership is easier than fixing mission. It feels boring initially because you're accustomed to chaos. But boring is actually peaceful, stable, sustainable foundation for genuine connection. You become unavailable for future fixing missions, and that protects your peace permanently. The fixing mission taught you everything you needed to know about what you will never do again. You will never sacrifice yourself trying to heal someone who won't get therapy. You will never absorb consequences of someone's patterns hoping absorption teaches them. You will never adjust yourself smaller to accommodate defended limitations. You will never carry relationship hope for two people. You will never do 90% while someone does 10%. Never again. This commitment to never again makes you unavailable for future fixing missions. When you encounter a wounded person, you feel compassion and you maintain boundaries. You can acknowledge someone's pain without taking responsibility for healing it. You can understand someone's patterns without tolerating harm those patterns create. You can see someone's potential without sacrificing present well-being waiting for potential to materialize. You recognize red flags immediately and act on them. Inconsistency? You're out. Emotional unavailability? Incompatible. Lack of reciprocity? Not interested. Unaddressed attachment wounds? They need therapy, not relationship with you. You don't explain yourself extensively. You don't give chances. You don't hope they'll change. You simply protect yourself by removing yourself from situations that don't meet standards. This protects your peace permanently. You're never again consumed by fixing mission. Never again losing yourself in someone else's healing journey. Never again performing emotional labor that's unreciprocated. Never again tolerating inadequacy based on hope. Never again mistaking compassion for someone's wounds with acceptance of their pattern's impact on you. Your peace becomes your priority. Not relationship, not partnership, not love. Peace. Because you learned that love without peace is suffering. Partnership without reciprocity is sacrifice. Relationship without standards is self-abandonment. You will not suffer, sacrifice, or abandon yourself ever again for someone who won't do their own work.